Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is the Nonprofit Association of Oregon's session. Today is Thursday, May 21st. My name is Jim White. I'm the Executive Director. Welcome. This is the second session that we're doing in this series, Rethinking Your Strategy, Planning Recovery for COVID-19. I know a number of you may not have been able to make the first session, so we're hoping that you were able to download and watch that session recording in advance of this, because it builds this session will build on some of what Steve and Jess did before. But if you can't, you can still find that on our website. So next slide. So I'd like to introduce Steve Patty with Dialogues in Action and his colleague, Jessamine Louise. You can both just say a quick hi.
Hi from Steve.
Hi, everyone.
Next slide. So we'd like to thank our funders and supporters whose gracious contributions help us to bring you this series and a lot of our other work right now to you for free. So much appreciate these foundations who are supporting us and these corporations who are supporting us right now to bring these sessions to you. Next slide. So today our agenda is, we've done our introductions. Steve and facilitating, supporting is going to be Jess, take you through this session today to design and adapt your strategy. And we'll be wrapping up around 1 o'clock today. Throughout this session, feel free to ask questions, and Jess is going to be walking you through some guided questions and some reflections on the sidebar. So next slide. On the sidebar of your screen, you should be able to see there's a chat function, there's a raise your hand function, there's Q&A. We're not going to have a set Q&A at the end of this session. Instead, go ahead and ask your questions and also respond to Steve and Jess throughout as they prompt you with certain reflections. So this, by the way, this is being recorded and it will be available. The slide deck and this recording will be available to you after this session is over. So we can dispense with that question because we always get that one. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Steve and Jess. Steve?
Thank you, Jim. And thanks, NAO, for doing all that you're doing for us these days. We deeply appreciate your investment in all of our lives and in our organizations. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending your lunch hour on this Thursday with us. We have been thinking about what to do about strategy, given the changing environment that we find ourselves in, recognizing that we probably need to rethink some aspects of how we approach our work, deliver our work, resource our work, given all that is in flux of our current context. So this is the second in the series, and last time we were together, last Thursday, we took some time to think about some key ideas about how to even approach or conceptualize what is adaptation, what assumptions we bring, how do we think about the way forward. Today and next Thursday, we are actually going to roll up our sleeves and get to work. And we'll walk through a number of steps of design, half the steps today, and then we have some homework for you, and then half the steps next Thursday that we get together. And we started our time last Thursday with a bit of an annoying quotation that there might be crisis in the middle, there might be opportunity in the middle of the crisis. So this quote, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." We realize that many of us have a hard time taking the opportunity of a crisis because we want to double down on current strategies, what we have been doing, what we're really good at, or we want to throw ideas at the problem. And neither of those will serve us well during this time. So we consider what it is like to think about the way forward in terms of adaptation. We were drawing the analogy last time we were together to a biological evolution, thinking that our objective during these days is not just to stabilize, to triage, to make sure that payroll is running and we have HR decisions made, and boards are briefed on everything. So the stabilization. But we're also thinking about the future. Well, what does it look like now this summer for our programming, and next fall, and maybe all the way through next year? And in this particular series, we're pressing in on that piece of adaptation. If you remember from our last time, we thought through 3 different aspects of adaptation. That there are some opportunities here in a crisis, that we might even be able to develop a better strategy than what we've had before. Just on the phone this morning with United Way of Lower Mainland and British Columbia, and over the past 2 months, they've evolved their strategy, and they're doing some really interesting things right now that they would not have been able to do 2 months ago. Along the way, we might also fix some chronic and pre-existing issues, some things that have just been plaguing us for some time now, and now this might be a great opportunity to get into those and see what we can do to renovate those. And along the way, it could give us opportunity to grow our leadership and our support team. There could be some opportunity here during this crisis. How do we take advantage of that? We're thinking here about adaptation, and again, using the evolutionary biological definition, that adaptation is a process by which a species becomes fitted to challenging or changing environment and is able to thrive. So we're not just thinking pivoting, you're leaving what you have been doing and doing something entirely different. So you've been working with foster youth. This is not the time to go herd sheep, right? Even though there might be a opportunity there business-wise with mutton or something. So it's how do we evolve who we are? How do we adapt while preserving what is brilliant about you and your strategy? Letting go, rearranging or re-regulating what will no longer work or be effective because things have been changing. And then develop new abilities or capabilities. So to step into a new frontier, to build our ability to do things in a different kind of way. To work on new strategies or capabilities that will serve us well into the future. And that's where we left off last time we were together. We talked a little bit about what is needed for that. But your task from last Thursday was to think through what's brilliant that you want to preserve, what we need to let go of, rearrange, or re-regulate. And what new capacities will you need to develop to help you thrive in a changing environment. So I know a number of you have done this. So Usula Vision, a group of really amazing leaders from a number of different professions in the Florence region along the coast. They thought through these. This may be similar to what you thought through as well. It's brilliant about what you are doing that you want to preserve. They're doing community building. You see the level of involvement, following the energy of the community, the momentum they have. That's part of their DNA, and they want to hold on to that. Well, they need to let go of, rearrange, or re-regulate. They're primarily doing interaction through in-person meetings and face-to-face conversations and over food. Now, they're not going to totally leave that behind, but their dependency on those is the primary version of connection. They'll need to let go of that dependency in order to develop new capacities. So new ways to engage people without meeting in person, new abilities to stay connected without having community gatherings, new approaches to mobilizing the community without our typical community. So as they walked it through, these were the ideas that they had. I imagine you had similar. So today in our time together, we're actually going to take steps rethinking the strategy. And this is going to be a bit of a workshop, which I know is awkward online. But there are 7 steps we want to take with you today. And so I'll try to set up the step. Each step, explain a little bit about the step, give you a few moments to write down some things. Invite you to write a couple of ideas in the chat box, and Jess will read them out, and then we'll move on to the next step. So we don't have time during our lunch hour here to do these steps the justice that they deserve, like what is required for each step. But our goal is to give you a taste of what it's like to go through a design process, and maybe spark some ideas that you have in your mind along the way. So Jess reminded me to warn you that we're going to be moving quickly, and you'll have to circle back to these steps and do them more sufficiently later on. So, you ready to go? If you have a pad of paper at hand, I'll invite you to write a few things along the way. By chance you're here with a colleague or a partner, feel free to open up another desktop view with a Google Doc or something on it so that you can work on this. So step one. It's helpful to identify the adaptive challenge at the start of any design process. The adaptive challenge is the way in which you need to evolve in order to be able to thrive in the changing environment. You know, even if you're thinking, well, what if we discover something that will make COVID-19 go away tomorrow? Well, probably we still have our collective psyches, the memory of this that will change us. Probably our economy will be hurting for quite some time. So most of us will need to evolve during this time in order to be able to thrive. So for you, what is the adaptive challenge you're facing in your program? And as you think about this, remember that you by nature are adaptable. You're a human being. You can adapt, but adaptation is not given. Remember that there are probably ways forward that you haven't yet discovered, and it's going to take some work to kind of move into that and some curiosity and creativity to find the pathways forward. And you're up for that. Most likely the skies won't part and epiphany descend, with a voice saying, here's the way to go. You probably have to work and think and struggle and talk to people in order to be able to design the way forward. But a little adaptation could go a long way. So what is the primary adaptive challenge facing your program right now? So if you are running camps for the summer, you've got an adaptation in front of you. How do we do camp in a way that's not like camps we've done before? If you're a performing arts organization, how do you think about the adaptive challenge? How do we impact people through the performing arts when people are hesitant to get together in a crowded room and sit next to each other? If you're a SUSLA vision, how do we do community building in a way that is profound and effective even during this time? Take a moment and write it down, if you will. And then would a few of you just write down your adaptive challenges into the chat box? And Jess is going to read a couple of these just to inspire us, to help us feel some companionship along the way, and help us see what each other is wrestling with here. The adaptive challenge. Probably we'll start with the question, how do we, going forward? A few of you will write those down. And Jess, as they come up, could you give us a couple of illustrations of this adaptive challenge?
Great, we've got a couple that have come in so far. And Steve, we also had someone say in the Q&A that they're having a hard time hearing you. So if you could keep your face going forward to your microphone, that would be really helpful.
Thank you.
So a few of the adaptive challenges that have come in include live theater as a community activity in close quarters. So how do they adapt to that? Moving big community events online and keeping the human element of that. What do we then have to do to offer what approximates that experience? We have how do we provide social service fairs to our community in need without having large gatherings? Rehearsing for performing arts is also not socially distanced. So singing really maximizes risk. Singing together really maximizes risk. And need to diversify funding sources where we thought we were well diversified before. As there's less to go around, greater diversity is still needed.
And that actually is a really nice segue into step 2. And I'll try to speak more clearly forward here. Step 2, examine your pre-existing context. What have been some of the chronic issues that have been nagging at you over the year? Some of the challenges you're facing right now are not only revealed by the crisis pulls back the curtains on this. They're not caused by the crisis, they're revealed by the crisis. So we want to use this opportunity to grow and evolve, not just to fix and to get through. If you've ever gone to therapy, or sought out a mentor, or sought counsel from someone who is wise. There's usually an inciting incident, something that causes you to show up. Some grief, some change of lifestyle, some pain in your life, some incident that you have to process. And if the therapist or counselor or mentor is good, they usually just don't throw a fix at it. Right? They usually sit down and ask you something like, since we're here, let's talk about other kinds of things that are within your life that have gotten you to this point, made you vulnerable to this, or have put you in a place where these kinds of decisions have seemed right or smart to take. So think about this in terms of a therapist coming to your organization right now, sitting down and saying, okay, the crisis is revealing some things. Even if I could just say, here's the quick fix. Let's talk about why you are here and what else might have been going on that gets you to the spot where there's some vulnerability or where you only have one way of doing things. So if you could, for a moment, just take a moment and write down what is on your mind, what are some chronic issues that have been nagging at you. Yesterday, I got David from Organ Robotics Tournament on the phone, and they're doing just amazing work impacting a lot of people, and I asked him this question and give a really good answer. So we have silos in our program that's reflected in our structures and staffing. Each program does its own thing. Staff has high ownership, which is really good, but it's been very difficult for us to work collaboratively. And this time is revealing that. And then he says also we have routines. We stick to those routines, those programs like ghost shifts. You set them in a direction, then you don't touch them. They just keep moving. So chronic issues that are nagging at you and your program, will you take a moment and write them down? And then would a few of you mind writing some in the chat box too? And Jess, as they come in, will you please give us a little picture of pre-existing issues that are being revealed more acutely now this time?
Yeah, we've got lots coming in. This is great. And someone asked in the Q&A as well whether we'd be able to share these. So yes, we can share the chat in the Q&A, that we can post them along with the slides and recording. So some of the things that have been coming in have been really about kind of collaborating at a distance. So doing decision-making processes, things like that from afar, really building relationships and kind of strengthening connection in remote ways. Somebody mentioned the challenge of working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities at a distance and helping them kind of access resources without being face-to-face is especially challenging. And I think one that came through is, how do we reopen our museum safely?
Interesting. Those sound like significant adaptive challenges, and I'm wondering, as you're thinking, might these adaptive challenges also be revealing some underlying issues that have been there for quite some time? Even in our organization, my team, there have been things that I just have not taken care of for a long time, not addressed. We've been thinking, we've been so busy, we're running so hard, we have these opportunities, we don't want to miss these opportunities. We've not given attention to something. So right now, this might be a good time to circle back as we're working on the adaptive challenge and see if we can reweave some of the fabric of our fundamentals so that we can also address chronic issues along the way. Okay, it's step 3. Here we are, step 3. And it gets more interesting as we go. What's the impact you want to have, especially now? So you know well that for a nonprofit, the value proposition is not in your existence. The value proposition is what you bring to the community, the impact that you have, the change that you are making. That's the value that you're bringing. I remember a number of years ago, I was working on the British Columbia Nonprofit Labor Market Partnership, which was a mouthful. It was basically a provincial effort to strengthen the nonprofits across British Columbia. And I was talking one evening to a respected community leader who is a business leader, and she said, "You know what the problem is with nonprofits?" No, what is the problem with nonprofits? She says that nonprofits don't know how to create value. They think they are the value. Now, I thought that was a little unfair of her, but from her perspective, as she looked at nonprofits, she heard nonprofits talking about them, their organization, their programs, their staff, what they do. She wasn't hearing them talk about the impact that they were having. And when we do evaluation kinds of projects, we often talk about where's the spotlight. There's a spotlight on you and your programs, or is the spotlight on the community and the impact that you're having? And that's really the value proposition that you're bringing. Now, the interesting thing about now and where we are in this time and place in history is that there might be some unique needs in our current context, in our communities, that might allow us to have a different kind of impact than we've been having before. So maybe you've been doing a program at out of school time just with children, and now we don't have children right now, they're with their families. And so you think, I wonder if our impact now could be even more so among families, not just with children. Or you've been doing food security, and food security has been in food banks that are in churches or schools, or churches and schools are different places right now. But really your impact is to mobilize a whole community to care for those who are experiencing hunger. So perhaps the impact right now is it could be even greater than what you had imagined. Last week we were talking with the Montana Nonprofit Association. They were rethinking their impact, especially for this time. And these are not departures from the impact that they have always intended, but uniquely suited for what is needed right now in Montana. As a result of the M&A, Montana's diverse community and nonprofit leaders develop and deepen relationships with other leaders. So you can picture a Montana filled with diverse people, many of whom are independent, very capable. They've always needed to be in relationship, but now even more than ever. So how might the impact of Montana Nonprofit Association during this time bring people together in deep, meaningful relationships? Right? In other words, the opportunity is there to have a greater impact, especially now. Here's another example of why Canada, they do many things, including physical education and nutrition, and they've been working with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of young people all across Canada. But then when this hits, they're thinking, well, what about the rest of the youth and children across Canada? And they're going to school online right now, and teachers are working so hard to translate math to Google Classroom. They don't have time to think about PE. So they said, well, why don't we do what we do well, put PE in a box and send it out to school districts all across Canada. Here, just do this, and this will be their PE nutrition part of. So they're thinking about an expanded impact, a deeper, more durable, more imaginative impact than they had before. I'm been inspired by Friedrich Buechner's quote that vocation is where your greatest passion meets the world's greatest needs. And there are some unique needs right now. So think about your impact for a moment. Maybe write down a couple of thoughts. How might your impact be greater, better now, given the unique needs that are here in our community? Jot them down for yourself. And then when you have a moment, if a few of you could put them up in the chat box here. What is the impact you might have, the value you're bringing? So if the spotlight shifts off of you, you're not asking people, be loyal to me, be loyal to our program, be loyal to our organization. But rather get excited about this particular impact that is in need right now uniquely.
Steve, we've got
Jessica,
some that have come in.
Please, go ahead. Yes.
So we've got one about helping our community heal, getting kids outside and helping with economic recovery, ensuring that children with disabilities don't fall even further behind in the wake of COVID, preserving and building community connections through the pandemic, deepening focus on developmental relationships and socio-emotional health of youth, give joy and happiness to our fragile customers, inspire, appreciate, and stewardship of coastal environments, and more broadly, the natural world, diversity, inspire curiosity towards nature and their local communities.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it? When, especially during a time of stress and crisis, when you're wondering how your program is going to be sustained, to think not about you, but about the value you're bringing to others. Because resources follow value. Resources follow impact. Energy follows that. Attention follows that. So where is our attention? And then may we revisit our value proposition and upgrade that. And that will give us some really nice inspiration for the way forward. So step four, re-examine your principles of change. What has made your program so effective so far? There have been a number of things you've been doing, probably doing for quite some time, that have been hard-won design features that you've experimented with, tried out, and now you're in a place where you've been deploying these features for quite some time, and they're really effective. Now, what happens often in times like this is we become attached to the practice instead of the principle behind the practice. So we become attached to our program and how our program has looked to date. And if we could take a step of extracting the principle from the practice. So we do these things, and these things are so effective. But why are they so effective? Can we distill the fundamental principle of this? Because it could be that during this time we need a different version of a practice, a different expression of this principle. We want to be true to the principle because we know that that's the thing that's catalytic, that leverages the impact we're having. But we need to be flexible and nimble with the particular expression of that. So one step that's really healthy to do is to take, what is it that we've been doing really well, and what is the principle that is embedded in that, so that then we can think through new and unique and contextual expressions of that. So here's an example from Connected Lane County. Doing wonderful work down in the Eugene area. What they do, one of the things that they do is to provide career learning opportunities for youth through partnerships with industry. But they're connected. Well, that's going to be, they'll find some challenges going forward. So what makes that effective? Well, it's breaking the routines of young people. It's changing their perspectives. It's making connections between everyday life and school learning. Is there any way that we can have a different expression of that principle? Keep us true to ourselves until either we can get back to this or maybe even to accompany this to augment what we've been doing. There's another example from 15th Night, again in the Eugene area, doing some really amazing things with youth that have been homeless for 2 weeks. The research is that by the time 2 weeks have passed, there's a better chance you'll still be houseless going forward. So they're trying to catch them at the 2 week mark. What they do, they go out to school staff, community members, train them. Well, probably not going to be out training them right now, but the principle is that they're involving and mobilizing the whole community. Might be different ways we could do that. So distilling that principle is a critical step. We won't take long with this. This will require more thinking. But for a moment, could you just write down a few things that are features of your program? Things that have gone so well, and then try to extract the principle from that. We'll see as we go forward if we can utilize that principle. And then as you're writing this down, if a few of you would write some principles into the chat box, and Jess will read them to inspire us. Again, the question is, what are some practices? What's part of your program that's been so brilliant? What is the principle that's embedded in that? You can identify the principle that we can think creatively about different practices going forward.
Great. We've got a few that have come in here. Flexibility and humility, trustful relationships, fostering appreciative inquiry, kids need to come first, experiential,
I'll just step in at this point because that last one was the really powerful principle, experiential. I'm sure that has a particular expression in a program. It looks like this when we do experiential kinds of things. But the principle is that it's experiential. And so going forward, then, in service to our revised intended impact, which is our value proposition, how might we embed experiential into whatever we do going forward? Because we know that that is the secret sauce. Right, that's the key ingredient that makes this so effective. And it may not look like it did in the past, but we're going to try to hold on to that particular principle of change. Step 4. Okay, step 5. Find your inspiration. Strange thing happens to many of us after years of working our programs is that we get into a rut. We have a mental model that is calcified, that's holding us steady. We can only think in one particular kind of way about the opportunity in front of us and how to engage. And then we get loyal to that and cling to that. And so we need to actually look around us to see what might inspire us, what might jog us out of the ruts in our brain, the ways our synapses have been firing, and spark some new connections. So here's the question: where are updrafts in our current context? When I was thinking about the metaphor of this, I remember that my younger brother is a glider pilot. He's actually that's not his job. He's an executive director of an NGO in Southern Europe, based out of Ljubljana, Slovenia. But on the weekends, on occasion, he goes up in a glider. And as you know, gliders are planes with no engines. And I thought, Josh would know about updrafts and downdrafts. So I called him yesterday and talked to him. And this is a more powerful analogy than I thought. So here are some fun facts about gliding. And you'll see the connection here. Ready? Where there's a downdraft, there's always an updraft nearby. Really interesting. He says, if you find yourself in a downdraft, look around because something is going up. Something about the atmosphere wants to equilibrate. So wherever there's things going down, something is going up. Find where that is and get inspiration from that. Turbulence is a good sign. It means you're passing from a downdraft into an updraft. He says when the air gets bumpy, that's actually a really good sign. So hard on us. Updrafts, he says, are strongest usually near the cliffs. I'm not excited about. When you want to move quickly through downdrafts, circle slowly in updrafts. This is a really interesting thing. When you find yourself in a downdraft, the novice wants to grab the stick, pull it back to preserve as much altitude as possible, to gain as much lift you can in the downdraft. But that's not the way to go. You actually have to be counterintuitive, push the stick forward and get through it. Zoom forward toward where you see updrafts happening, even if it means you're losing some altitude in the process. It's a powerful metaphor. And then another fun fact about gliding. Gliders can reach an altitude twice that of a jetliner. They get into spacesuits, go up to 30,000 feet with no engine. Many of us have lost our engines right now, right? So we need to figure out how to find updrafts along the way. So where do you see things working right now? Where is there energy in people? Where is there momentum in our communities? Even in other professions. So you think through, why are there, I live in Portland and I see Trader Joe's. Like, why are there always lines in front of Trader Joe's right now? Why do I make my weekly pilgrimage to Trader Joe's when there is a perfectly good grocery store just 2 blocks away? Something about that experience right now, I'm more in tune to. Or the hour people wait to get into the nursery for gardening. these kinds of things. Like, where are their currents going up? Even in other sectors, where there might be some inspiration. We take a moment, write some things down, even if it is not at all related to you. There's an updraft. Maybe even some different approaches to things, like what have professors been doing with distance education for a while? Why have MOOCs been so successful? The massive online, I don't recall what the other OC stands for. Right? What is happening out there that's lifting? Because many of us currently are in a downdraft. And then what principles are at work in those? Let me give one other example from YMC Canada, and then if you can, be writing and write some things down in the chat box as well. So we recognize that a lot of people are going to apps right now for mindfulness and for exercise, and there are community development organizations that like to bring people together. You know, the power of people in a room interacting, but they're thinking there's an updraft over there. So what they did fairly quickly about a month ago is they shifted a number of their programs about kind of personal health into an online format. They call it Why Well. And so there's a yoga instructor and there's someone talking about, like a psychologist talking about how to stay mentally healthy. They talked me into doing a leadership course. It's usually a curriculum that we do for executive directors over the course of a year, and I'm doing it 7-minute video sections. I thought it would never work, but it's interesting. So they're putting all this content in a way that people can then engage with, since that's an updraft curve. There's still the why, but they're thinking of how might we maximize the kinds of things that people are being drawn to. We take a moment, write some things down. Where might there be some inspiration for you?
See, we've got some great examples coming in.
Good, thank you.
So people are wanting to work together to solve problems. So it's overcoming some of those barriers that used to be there. Time to give personal attention to patrons and donors, one-on-one conversations that are deeper and more personal. People reconnecting with their food sources, linking their food security to food produced closer to home. Increased need and interest to intentionally connect in new ways. People are getting used to things like Zoom or, online communication tools. Things like telehealth are moving online. People want to get outside. It's good for mental health. With all the park closures, people are seeing and recognizing the value of outdoor recreation areas. Care, concern, and support has really been elevated. Parents at home with their families are discovering their children's gifts and appreciating the skills of their children's teachers. We're all collectively experiencing significant disruption and turbulence at the same time, and it highlights our common humanity through a shared struggle. Funder flexibility in the use of resources. They've been giving us the ability to provide direct financial support that's needed.
They're so good. They're so good.
Yeah.
So the idea is, if we're in a downdraft in our particular program, might we look for inspiration and get out into some of that, be inspired by that, not to do the exact same thing, but to figure out how we might use a similar kind of updraft, believing that there is something around us that we probably have not thought of. There would be a version of our program that could get us moving again. Okay, step 6. We really need a whole day to do this. Step 6, generate ideas. So I imagine already in just the 45 minutes we've had together so far, some ideas have been percolating for you. And ideas often at this stage sound like, what might it look like if? So it's not a fully baked program. It's just a spark of an idea, right? Something bubbling up. I wonder if there's something that could be here. And the idea when you think about generating ideas is to aim for multiple ideas, not just one idea, not the silver bullet, silver buckshot. You need options in front of you. And we'll take some of those options, we'll develop them between now and next time, and then we'll develop them more fully next Thursday. But try to identify 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 ideas. Think experimentally at this point. This may not be a great idea at all. It could just be an experiment. But that's fine. So don't worry too much about feasibility yet. We'll work on that next Thursday. It's okay if your ideas are outside your current repertoire. So if you're thinking, actually, we don't know how to do this, we can't pull this off, we don't have the skill set, we don't have the resources, we don't have the connections, that's okay, write it down. It may be that we could find a way, find a pathway to that, find a glide path over into that space. And then don't build out the ideas yet. Just identify some ideas. So what might it look like if we tried this, we looked at this, we experimented with that? Take a few moments and just write a couple things down. Get in the headspace of brainstorming, where you're not overthinking things. Let your thoughts be guided by a revised intended impact. How might we have greater impact? How might we provide better value to the community? Informed maybe by your principles of change. There's some key ingredients that we know really work, the way we can get that going. Inspired by some updrafts that you see around you. It might be helping you think outside of your rut and with a different kind of mental model. Take a few moments to write that down. If a few of you could write it into the chat box, we'd love to hear just a couple percolating ideas. They don't have to be good ideas at this point, so no pressure to have anything all that amazing, but just an idea. Just as these ideas come in, could you read a few of them for us, please? Again, think through what might you do? Is there an inspiration idea out there that might inform how you redesign something? Is there an intended impact that might amplify your vision and lift your gaze to something bigger, broader? The principles of change that you part of your program that you might repurpose and have a different expression.
All right, we've got one here from Gordon who says FaceTime with customers one-on-one or round robin with a sequence of staff.
Great idea.
Use time for customers. Developing nature exploration kits for families to explore nature on their own. More
Great
parent
idea.
connection, virtual programming opportunities to expand to other communities.
Right.
Collaborate more with other organizations working with nature.
Yeah.
Rather than doing it yourself. That's great. Cross-training with staff and volunteers. We've always been a very serious organization, repurposing towards comfort and joy programming. Great.
Those are wonderful ideas. Just wonderful ideas. I'm not surprised that your comments are coming more slowly when we get to step 6, the ideas step. You may need to actually, in order to take the ideas step, circle back around on the first 5 steps and do them a bit more thoroughly. And as you do them a bit more thoroughly, you'll find things begin to emerge and to surface. Could be also you include others, maybe even outside of your program, in thinking through the first 5 steps, so that when you get to step 6, there is fresh thinking, new brains involved. People have different mental models that they're bringing to the issue. And then again, the idea is not to find the perfect solution at this point. We'll work on that next Thursday. Right now, you want to aim for a handful of possibilities, just a series of ideas, some of which may be a bit outlandish. Some of them might be, oh, of course we're going to do that. and maybe others that would take some development. So a whole array of ideas. And then we're going to take one more step, and then we'll close for the day. So do some research. So what do you need to find out about these ideas? Now you have a couple of ideas in front of you. So, well, what are the key questions that need to be answered in order to judge the feasibility of this? And where might we go to get the answers for that? And who might you need to talk to in order to understand your option better? Are there people who know about this better than you, have more experience, that you can float the idea by them? What data are out there that could inform your ideas? Are there resources that could look up, that could be quick to check in, find out, discover some things? Who's tried this before? Who's tried this before? Let's get them on the phone, figure out how it went, what they did, why they stopped doing it, or why they're continuing to do it. Who might you want to partner with? Who could be interested in getting behind this and joining you? So what do you need to find out at this point, given your possibilities of ideas in front of you? So take a moment, just write down a few things. This will be the steps you'll take between now and next Thursday. Are there a few people that you can talk to? You don't need to write that in the chat box. Is there information out there you could track down? Are there people doing something similar in other disciplines or sectors or professions? Give a call, float the idea by them. There's some really creative people that don't know much about your organization, but you're friends with them. You like to just spend a little time processing these things with partners, funders. What do you need to find out? Take a moment, just write this down. If any of you would like to write into the chat box, feel free to do so. We'll read out a couple of these.
We've got one here from Ashley. How will diversified funding bring challenges to our service delivery methods and fulfillment of our mission?
Thank you, Ashley.
That will certainly take some research.
That will take some research. And there's precedents out there, right? People have been thinking about that for a bit. Probably some people you could call.
Susie says, can we use grant funding for nature kits? How many would we need? Would the kits be on a checkout basis, or would the children keep them? Lots to think about with that.
Yeah. Yes.
Bruce says, what challenges are our community partners facing where our organization can be part of the solution?
Right. Great question for research.
And Lisa says she's going to do some research with some resources that she's found to learn about what it will take for patrons to return to live theater. A lot of questions about funders and what they'll be willing to support. Lots of research to do with them. Erin's talking about connecting with volunteers to see if they feel safe working with the public in different capacities. Karen asked a great question here. Will people continue to engage in online programming as the landscape changes? How will we be able to use a mix of tools going forward? Sarah says, as our small business team, we want the new ideas we've come up with.
Yes, right. It's just some market research there, right? Some participant research. Does it sound fun? Does it sound helpful? Is this of value to you? So for the next step, this will be the last step we take today, and we're actually a little bit early. I was so concerned that we wouldn't get through 7 steps. We usually take a full day to work this through with teams. If you could identify 2 or 3 ideas that are high potential ideas, and then identify the research steps that you'll need to take, what you need to learn about or track down or find out or know better, even if you won't know it completely, in order to make some decisions about those ideas and begin to build them out, which is what we will do next time we are together. We'll think through, so what did you learn this week? What is 1 or 2 ideas that seem to be emerging as front runners for options? And then we'll think through, like, how do you prototype them? How do you stress test them? How do you utilize the resources that you have right now in order to repurpose your resources for that? How do you develop partnerships external to you to be able to move them forward? And then how do you design a plan? And those will be the steps that we'll take next time that we are together. So between now and next Thursday, the homework, this course, is to do the research, to do these do research on these questions that you identified. And again, I'm reminded of this scene. It's just from a movie, I know. It's just from a movie, where the Apollo 13 is venting oxygen into space. They realize they've lost the mission, but they need to bring the men home. Pandemonium erupts in the command center in Houston. And the guy in charge calls everybody, makes them quiet, and says, "Hey, everyone, work the problem. Don't make things worse by just guessing." We're realizing that design work is work. There's a challenge in front of us. It's adaptive. It's evolutionary. It's hard to take those steps and move forward. Excruciating, terrifying for many of us. We have to keep at it, keep working the problem. So we would recommend that you take these steps and cycle through them a few times, and then do some research on this. And then next Thursday, we're going to take some steps going forward as well, and see if we can get you to a spot where you've got something to do that you're excited about, and it looks reasonable, and you think your team and your board and your funders would also be excited about. If by chance you want to do kind of a deeper dive into this, we're actually going to pull together a number of teams from organizations in a rapid redesign project that piloted in Central Europe just a week or so ago. 2 days, 1 week apart with your team in a cohort, early June. And we're going to work through these with a lot more coaching, a lot more time, and a number of different elements. Feel free, if you'd like, jump on dialoguesaction.com, check it out. We'd love to have you a part of that if you would like. Let me turn it over now for a wrap up to, I believe, Curtis. Curtis, are you giving the final word here?
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate it. If you want to move to the next slide. We really appreciate you and Jess taking your time today and going through all of these really great pieces of information that I hope will help our nonprofit community here to move forward while we're starting to see the light here to a degree, I guess, maybe speaking a little too soon. I'd also like to thank all of our funders. Without their support, this would not be possible. If you could move to the next slide. I'd also like to thank our corporate sponsors. Without all of their support, this programming would not be possible. So again, thanks so much, Steve. If anybody has not checked out the NAO COVID-19 resource page, please go ahead and do so. It's updated daily. There's quite a bit of information there. I will send out an email evaluation with the slides, the recording, the chat, and Q&A, and any other resources that Steve would like to add. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll see you next Thursday at the same time for the final session.